Hello, I'm Ken McNabb. Today we're talking about pad and saddle placement. When we look at a horse as a whole, we have to understand that he carries 70% of his body weight in his front legs. That means that's where he really wants to carry 70% of our weight too. I've started hearing people talk about making sure that we get the saddle and the pad set back behind the scapula. I find it amazing that man has existed with the aid of horses since God created both of them, but we think we only figured out how to do it right in the last 5 or 7 years. The truth is this horse carries 70% of his weight on his front legs. That's where he wants to carry your weight. Look at his back like a suspension bridge. This is the motor back here. It bears this weight kind of like right here, and it propels everything forward. But this is where the horse actually bears weight. So when I take my pad, I want to set it up over the withers, and I like a contoured pad. I'm using, on this particular setup, this horse's top line's not real flat, so I'm using 1.25 inch felt by Weaver. I love a good solid felt pad. But I set that pad up over the withers. I want the withers under the pad. Your cinch is going to ride in the horse's girth. Some horses' girth sits further back, some further forward, but the girth is the tightest or narrowest spot in his chest cavity. And that's where your cinch or girth sets, okay? So when I saddle him, I set that pad good and far forward, and then I want to take my saddle and set it up there accordingly. And I want to set it up so that I'm going to cinch up right here in his girth area. So again, we're going to drop that latigo down and just let you see it hanging there. It's going to hang straight down. Now, I'm pretty fanatical. I come back here and I look. I've got a groove on his backbone right here, and it centers the pad and centers the saddle. I'm off probably less than 1 degree. Here's my opinion. If you don't center things, it's like wearing your blue jeans twisted all day. I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like it'd be real comfortable to me. Okay? So here's one of the things that I do that really freaks people out. I hook the breast collar up first because I work a lot of bad colts and snaky colts. And what I've learned is that when you saddle a horse up, when you pull that cinch tight, as you're pulling it tight, he might blow up and take off. This right here scares a lot of old timers. They say, oh my word, what happens if that saddle rolls over? Well, let's ask that question. What happens? Saddle's gonna roll over, it's gonna swing down right here, horse is gonna drop his head and suck backwards, and the saddle's sitting on the ground. However, if you don't hook the breast collar, and you get the cinch almost tight, but not quite, and that horse blows up and takes off running and bucking, and I know he shouldn't, but I live in a world where things that shouldn't happen do all the time. So what happens, you get this almost snug, and he blows up, and you have a wreck. That saddle rolls, and now it's under his belly, but it doesn't quite come free. And he's kicking and tearing, and he's scaring himself to death. With the breast collar, it slides off the side, and that's as far as it goes. It's stuck there, okay? So for me, it's a safety protocol to do that. So as I pull my cinch up tight here, I'm going to leave that latigo hang. You can see, I'm going to step that front foot forward. There we go. You can see where that cinch is hanging. His is setting right in here close to his shoulder. That's where that belongs. The weight of that saddle is up over his withers, okay? You're forward. You're over the scapula. Yes, you are. And you should be, because your saddle, the bars on your tree, actually are beveled away from the horse. And that bevel allows for the shoulder to move underneath the bar of the tree. The great thing about the horse industry is that if you don't like my opinion, you can look around and find someone whose opinion you agree with. I've based my opinion on a lifetime of long hours in the saddle. All day rides on the same horse. 10, 15 hours on the same horse routinely working cattle. And at the end of the day, pulling that saddle off and not having anything more than some sore and tender muscles on their whole body or on my whole body, or no sores at all. I want my saddle to be correct. Here's one of the things that I do that shocks people a little bit. I run my pad forward, okay? So I'm gonna step around here. That back cinch is a little loose, so I'm gonna step around here and adjust a notch over here. But as I do, I'm also gonna show you right here. You've got 3 fingers between the front of the saddle and the front of the pad. Well, let's reach back here. You've got 1 finger between the back of the saddle and the back of the pad. Why? Here's why. I go up and down hill a lot. When you go uphill, what happens? Things slide back. I've never in my life had a pad work forward, out from underneath the saddle. But I have seen pads work backwards out from underneath the saddle. So I personally put more pad in front of the saddle than I do behind it. What you're really worried about is right here. This is what you're worried about, right? So really, let's give the whole tree credit. This is what you're worried about right here. So this just gives me a cushion of space for that saddle to work the pad out backwards. Another thing that we hear people talk about is they'll say, oh, my horse is really short backed, that pad interferes with his hips. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm going to tell you that in my life I've never seen it happen, and here's why. You're sitting on top of his back. The hips are moving underneath. And yeah, they come up and down, but as they come up and down, so does the back. And it's lifting that pad up and down. Now, Laramie here is kind of a long-backed horse, so you're not going to see any interference. But the truth is your hip bone is right here, hip muscle here, hip bone here. That pad is going to ride over top of it, never touch it. I've never seen a horse's hips sored from the pad. However, I do see horses where the hair is wore off right here. And people think that's from the pad and the action of the hindquarters. I hate to break your heart, but it's not. That's not what causes that. What causes that hair to be wore off right here is you sitting too hard here. You're putting too much weight here. That happens for one of 2 reasons. If your saddle doesn't fit correctly and it's too narrow, the front end sticks up and we bridge. We pass all of this. We have pressure down here low and right here. And so that magnifies the weight in your saddle and that wears on that hair. That's sometimes the cause. More frequently, it's because you're riding long hours and you get tired and you take weight out of your stirrups and you put it right here. I'm going to venture to say if you ride an hour a day, 4 days a week, you've never seen that short hair. It could happen, but it'd be pretty uncommon. But where you see that is in somebody who goes on a 5 or 6 hour trail ride, maybe once a week. And when they get home, all of a sudden that hair looks shorter. And it's because 4 hours into that ride, their knees started hurting and they kicked their feet out of the stirrups and they started sitting right here. And as they did, that friction back and forth wears that hair off. Pad choice is really up to you, and it's really important as you make your pad selection. I try to think about what's going on here. So I get ready to ride. I want to make sure everything's put together. I like natural fibers against my horse's back. As I said, this is 1.25 inch felt from Weaver Equine. I love the felt, the natural ability to wick moisture away from the horse's back and cool through evaporation really works for me. Rubber pads are built on the concept of a radiator, and they circulate the moisture, and as the air hits it, it cools that moisture. Evaporation is like when you wear a t-shirt and you get it wet and you go out on a hot day, and as that water evaporates, it keeps you cool. That's what I like in a natural fiber. Whether it's mohair or wool, I don't really care. Cotton works. I like wool better. I think it does a better job. When we go skiing in the winter, what do? We wear wool because it gets moisture away from our body. I think wool is a better product in the long run, but if you want to use cotton, it will work much the same. For me, I think the important things are just remembering what your pad's job really is, right? You're to cool your horse's back, absorb shock, and reduce friction. Get the best pad that you can to do those jobs. Remember, honestly, padding is cheap in comparison to what you're spending on the rest of this program. What you spent on the truck, the trailer, the horse, the saddle, your annual feed bill. This comes down to a pretty cheap piece. So buy a good pad and ride it, place it well under the saddle, and enjoy your days. I hope you've enjoyed this segment as much as I have bringing it to you. And until next time, may God bless the trails you ride.